My guest today is Professor Haruhiko Tanaka on this episode of the Ikigai Podcast. Professor Tanaka, you recently retired from your role of professor in the Faculty of Human Science at Sophia University. You completed your doctorate at the University of Tokyo's Graduate School of Education, specializing in community education. And your areas of research include lifelong education, youth work, and education for sustainable development. You've also worked with international cooperation NGOs as a means of social contribution, and among your notable publications are Development Education Toward a Sustainable World and Ibasho, Community for Youth and Youth Social Participation. Thank you for being a guest on the Ikigai Podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this program. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Tanaka-sensei. So you recently retired. So how are you enjoying retirement?
Oh, so and so. I am happy with being free from the stress of teaching and researching.
Have you picked up any new hobbies?
Yeah, I'm always thinking about the writing, not only my major, but everything.
Everything? So
Yeah,
does that include like creative writing?
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. Well, on the subject of writing, I came across your paper titled Development of the Ibasho Concept in Japanese Education and Youth Work, Ibasho as a place of refuge and empowerment for excluded people. I love this word Ibasho. It's become very meaningful to me. I think my community is an Ibasho. So it is one of my favorite Japanese words. How would you define Ibasho?
Yeah, thank you very much for your attention to Ibasho concept. Ibasho is a Japanese composing of I and Basho. I is being, and Basho is place. So it's a very usually everyday life we use it. And my definition is Ibasho is a place or community one feels at home.
Yeah, I love this word, and it's very interesting how this word generally means a whereabouts or where someone is, but recently it's become quite a powerful word, meaning your place to be or where you can feel comfortable. And I think everyone wants that in their life. So I think that drove you to writing your paper, and your aim of your paper was to examine the academic significance of the concept of Ibasho. So could you elaborate on how Ibasho, a commonly used word, came to be used as an academic term?
Yeah, the old Japanese word Ibasho is have been used in everyday situations like please tell me his Ibasho, his roundabout, his whereabouts. The use of this term Ibasho is newly being used in the policy making and research in 1990s. The background of this is in 1980s, the Japanese education problem was truancy, those who do not attend schools. And the Minister of Education, Monbusho in Japan, gave a report of policy of truancy in 1992. The subtitle was "Give them Ibasho in schools." So Ibasho is being not a usual word, but policy making. And after that, the researchers like in the field of education, psychology, sociology, and architecture, they use the word of Ibasho as a technical term.
Yes, very interesting. I do know, and I've heard from my Japanese friends, and I've certainly read in articles and in newspaper articles how for Japanese, school and high school can be quite a stressful place. Lots of homework. In fact, there's probably too much homework.
Bukatsu.
School activities.
Sports and festivals.
So I do have the feeling that for many Japanese or young Japanese school can be a place of stress or hardship. Do you think the education system this is a question we haven't prepared, but do you think schools are becoming more Ibasho friendly in Japan?
Yes, there is some projects of the making Ibasho, like a youth work approach in school. They have some space or comfortable space with a youth worker, not the teachers. Ibasho making project. Yeah, not very much, but some schools do that.
This also reminds me, I think it might have been the early 2000s of the Yutori generation.
Yutori High.
Yeah, and that was a test to see if giving students less homework would be beneficial to their education. But my understanding, the testing system didn't change for that generation, and they did quite poorly in their, I think, final exam results. So I think Japan's education system has tried many things. So Yutori and now Ibasho.
Yeah, Ibasho is one of them. Yeah, Ibasho is one of them.
So let's dive into your paper. I found your paper very helpful, and you mentioned that there are 3 elements in Ibasho, and I find these 3 elements extremely empowering and helpful. So would you like to explain what these 3 elements are?
Yeah, the 3 elements of Ibasho is a place, and human relations, and time. The first is a spatial element. The word basho is place, yeah? So yes. Ibasho is a place of or community of comfortable place for the people. And as one feels safe, secure, accepted, and approved. These places are Ibasho. The home is the first Ibasho for most of the children. And the second Ibasho should be schools. But the schools not necessarily be Ibasho for everyone.
No.
Because the schools is evaluated by grades or sports, such kind of high grade of sports or literature. So the Ibasho school is not necessarily Ibasho for them. For the students or children who do not accept their culture of schools, they need a third place, except school, home and school. Third place, like a youth center or free school, free space, and so on. Yeah, second element is human relations. It's very, very important for Ibasho. For most of the students finding Ibasho at school is, for most of the students, truant do not find Ibasho in schools due to bad relations with classmates or teachers. So Ibasho is a place where good relationship is guaranteed, or at least no one is a threat. It's a second element of Ibasho, human relations. And the third is, it's very important. It's a time, element of time. A place is not Ibasho when there's no perspective for the future. When a student escapes from the school, they have, he or she loses not only space, but perspective of the future. What should I do next? What's my future, near future? Yeah. Am I good not attending to school? But for the future, what should I do? So they are very anxiety about he or her future. So the timescape is very important element for Ibasho.
Thank you for sharing those 3 elements. I've put a lot of reflection on these 3 elements and my experience of living in Japan. And actually, one of my best friends who I had a business with in Japan, his oldest son really struggled with school. He actually developed mutism at school. So he just would not talk to anyone. And he didn't feel very comfortable engaging in conversation and talking to people at school. And I think he spent much of his time in sick bay or in the nurse's station studying by himself. So I was quite concerned about my friend's son, whether or not he was happy and if he was surviving. But actually, he's done quite well, and now he's studying at a university in Tokyo. So it sounds like he got through school and he's studying engineering, computer engineering. So I think it was okay in the end for him. And then I've discovered through my own business that Ibasho can be a community. And I guess I've developed Ibasho with my community, and that's been through Zoom calls and doing podcasts and things like that. So I have regular Zoom calls with my members in my community. And even though we're not in the same room, we still share and have engaging conversations and share aspects of our personal life. So it's become a virtual Ibasho, and that feels really satisfying and really rewarding.
Yeah.
And then I really tied the time element to the Ikigai concept. I think a part of Ikigai is feeling that your life is moving forward and you have this bright future. I think Miyako Kamiya wrote in her book that one of the Ikigai needs was to have a bright future. So that time element of thinking you have a positive future to look forward to seems really crucial to our sense of self and where we belong in the world.
Ikigai is life, but at the same time, it's Ikigai is iku is go. Somewhere.
That's a good way to remember that. Yeah, so to move forward, to go. Perfect. So I love these Japanese words like Ikigai or Ibasho, which they're not really special words in the context of the Japanese language, and Japanese don't really talk about Ikigai and probably occasionally use Ibasho, but they become these words of research, and I find it very fascinating. And what I loved about your paper is you tied the concept of Ibasho to two psychological theories. One was Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, and one was Erik Erikson's theory of identity. And I found that very helpful. And I actually share your research with my community, and they really enjoy learning about it. So can you walk us through how you see Ibasho relates to Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah. Maslow's basic human needs, such as he pointed out 5 elements. Oh, 3, sorry. Safety, security, and recognition often appear in the description of Ibasho theories. Maslow argued that there are 2 main stages of motivation for human behavior. One is scarcity, which refers to the motivation to satisfy the lack of something. This motivation consists of 4 deficiency needs: physiological, safety, belonging, and self-esteem. Ibasho can be described as a place that satisfies these deficiencies. And he also argued that desire to grow, after satisfying these elements, the needs for desire. This relates to the Ibasho concept of the times elements. Yeah.
Yes, the desire to grow. I do relate that to that third element of Ibasho. So your perspective of future. And it might also, I've actually got another book by Tsukasa Kobayashi. And he related Ikigai to the Jiko Jitsugen, so self-actualization. So Ikigai was also, in his opinion, related to Maslow's hierarchy of needs in that it was the desire to grow. So I like how Ibasho and Ikigai are somewhat tied together. And actually, I really didn't know a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So thanks to your paper, I discovered the deficiency needs. And obviously, if we don't have these needs, these physiological safety, belonging, or self-esteem needs, I guess we're deficient. And they must be satisfied. I guess the theory is they must be satisfied before we can grow. But you've tied those three elements of Ibasho to those deficiency needs. And I guess the third element is the desire to grow. So how did you come to that realization?
I think that as Maslow's theory, the need of belonging or need of recognition is very, very important. These two factors very related to the Ibasho. Ibasho needs, as I explained, the Ibasho need the human relationships. And so that this related to his deficiency needs of recognition and belongings. And after that, he argued that self-actualization is a higher needs for human being, he argued. And this is also the base for the Ibasho. After he or she can keep he or her Ibasho, they can develop more to grow or finding something he or she needs.
Yes, so self-actualize. Yeah, this also ties into Kamiya Miiko's needs of a hankyo, so resonance. So she identified 7 needs, and one was hankyo, so the desire for social affiliation. And she also talked about self-actualization and meaning and value and change and growth. So all these theories seem somewhat related. And then you also looked into Erik Erikson's identity theory, which I'm not really familiar with. So can you talk about this correlation?
Erikson's theory is that he is a psychologist of developmental psychologist. And he said that developmental task of young people is to get identity. When the childhood and adulthood, in between the youth, adolescence, the young people being in adolescence, they have sometimes identity diffusion. They should find his identity during this developmental stage. So Erikson argued that developmental task of young people is having identity, definite identity.
This is during the teenage years?
Teenagers, yes.
And that's often a hard time, isn't it, for teenagers?
Yeah, hard time.
Trying to find their sense of self or their Ibasho, perhaps.
Yeah. So he said that the young adolescent stage is a stage of moratorium. So youngsters not necessarily get the responsibility to be an adult. They can challenge everything, and the society can permit it. This is a stage of adolescence, he said.
I see. So how does that tie into Ibasho then?
Yeah. Some definition of Ibasho is a place where one can be themselves. So in other words, many people who have an established identity may have a place to belong. Or so instead, people whose identities are diffuse may feel they have no Ibasho. And so some studies report that there is a significant correlation between the sense of Ibasho and identity.
Yeah, it's all fascinating work. So let's touch on policies and projects. So you wrote about how the concept is related to government policies and projects today. So how is Ibasho or the Ibasho concept related to policies and projects today in Japan?
Yeah. As I mentioned, the Japanese Ministry of Education, Monbusho, proposed the idea of making Ibasho in schools to prevent truancy. This report was given in 1992. And also youth work policy was changed. Japanese youth work, the main method was group work, so making groups. And the group work in Japanese context is very rigid, like sports clubs or Boy Scouts, like that. But these kind of rigid group work gave a less and less influence to young people. Young people don't like groupings, being a member of groups in 1980s. So the Japanese youth work policy should have been changed. So after 10 or 15 years later, they find the new policy of youth work is to give them Ibasho, give them a place of a comfort place without forcing them to be a group.
I see. This actually reminds me of the proverb in Japan: the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So in Japan, yeah, there's a strong social pressure to conform and not be different and not stick out like an individual.
Yeah.
But it sounds like Ibasho allows for some more individual freedom. Do you think?
Yeah. Giving Ibasho project is only giving them a comfort place, and youth workers do not organize them to be a group. So they permit them every youngsters to be themselves. They can chat or read a book or enter into a group. It's okay. It's a free. Before that, Japanese youth work was rigid. And
was it rigid?
For example, youth center, residential youth center should be used by more than 5 members. Okay. never less than 5 members. Should be a groups.
I see.
Yeah, until 1980s.
Yeah, it's interesting you use the word rigid. It is appropriate. And yeah, in Japan, I guess my experience was there was certainly a lot of social cues or roles to follow. And it always reminds me of that word meiwaku, or that expression meiwaku kakenai de. I remember parents would just say that to their children all the time. And I was very surprised. That would be often a parting greeting to a young child, like dropping them off at school. Meiwaku kakenai de ne, like don't cause trouble today. So there seems to be quite a lot of social pressure, and as you mentioned, rigid structure to groups. But moving on, I'd like to quote your paper. You mention all humans live in a state of coping with the outside world. However, several external pressures have weakened our original social power and reduced it to the minimum inner circle, a deprived person. Creating Ibasho is a necessary refuge for the oppressed. The restoration of the social power supposed to be inherent is called empowerment. Ibasho functions as a foundation to recover the social power of the oppressed. So yeah, would you like to expand on this, Sensei?
Yes. Take an example. In 1980s, free schools and free spaces were refuge for truant students. In this facility, they could avoid the public cold view. Their damaged mentalities were restored and revitalized in these free schools. But in turning point came around 2000. The preschool students studied in Europe. They visited European free schools. They found that in European countries, these free schools are situated as a formal schooling, and the truant students have a very active, and so they found that the Japanese school system is not good. They found.
I see.
And after coming back to European tour, they have organized a group to promote the new law for ensuring diverse education opportunities. So the truant students was once a refuge in such free schools, but after that, they recover. After recovering, they now some power to change the school system in Japan. And this law was enacted in 2017. Yeah?
Oh, that's good. That's some progress. my memory of my son's education at primary school, it was very positive, and he was doing things like public speaking, and we had this open learning plan and lots of activities related to the real world. They had a garden project, and they would make vegetables, and they would either eat them or they could sell vegetables at the school fair. And then once he went to the same school, once he went to high school, it changed back to that rigid traditional structure of teaching and learning, and he really struggled and didn't like it. So I do think education's a bit backward and a bit old-fashioned. So
Yeah.
an Ibasho in a school that would allow this diverse educational opportunities, I think is where education needs to go in all countries. This also reminds me of hikikomori, and we haven't really discussed this, and we haven't prepared any questions or notes on this, but I guess people who are hikikomori, they also lack ibasho, do you think?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Ibasho functions not only the refuge for the stressed youngsters, but it's a base for tackling again with the society, or when they empowered in the Ibasho, they can do that.
Yeah, that's hikikomori. I guess we describe that as a social withdrawal problem or extreme social withdrawal, where usually young men or teenagers lock themselves in their bedroom at their parents' home and stay there for sometimes years, decades even.
Empowerment is very, very important because when they recovered from the such a very stressful situation, the society hasn't changed yet. They cannot adopt again the same problem. So they should change the
society.
outer world. So it's very, very hard, I think, but not only recovering themselves, but empowered and change the society. So it is not impossible for themselves, but there must be supporters for them.
Yeah, Japan's such a beautiful culture and country, yet it does have significant problems with, I think everyone would know about declining birth rate, aging population. Japan doesn't really take a lot of immigration. So yeah, I always am fascinated about where Japan is headed and how will they overcome these problems. And yeah, I mean, that hikikomori problem is a really big problem. And as you've just mentioned, it seems it's unsolvable unless there's significant societal change. My other memory is mental health issues. That's another space I think Japan's a bit slow to counter. In Australia, we have many initiatives for mental health. So we have many organizations and lots of advertising, lots of awareness for mental health. So if you have mental health, you can call someone, you can go to a website, you're encouraged to talk about your mental health. But my understanding in Japan, it's still a bit backward or a bit slow, that talking about your mental health problems is almost considered troublesome, or meiwaku, you're causing trouble. So I guess people with mental health issues maybe also lack ibasho, whether that's in Australia or in Japan. Yeah. What do you think of mental health issues in relation to ibasho or what's happening with Japan?
Yes. The people of hikikomori loses place of recognition. Before 15 years ago, Japanese society has many, many jobs for them. They can work from 9 o'clock until 5 without talking everyone, just same work, very simple work. But they are evaluated and they get a salary, before. But this kind of jobs has been gone from Japan to the other world. So that hikikomori type people cannot survive in this globalized Japanese
I
situation.
see.
Yeah.
So they've lost, I guess, Japan used to have guaranteed life employment with one company.
Mm. So
And
this is not a psychological problem, hikikomori. It's a social problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on and let's touch on your interest and work related to the Sustainable Development Goals of
Yeah.
the United Nations. You mentioned that to me when we last spoke. So can you tell me about the SDG, so the Sustainable
Yes.
Development Goals?
Yes, SDGs is from the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This is adopted by United Nations in 2015. It provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet. And at the heart of it, this agenda, there is 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals, SDGs, which are an urgent call for action by all countries, not only developed, but developing countries, like global warming, or gender, or poverty, peace, and so on. And the name of this main issue of this agenda is leave no one behind. Leave no one behind. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess this relates somewhat to your research. Leave no one behind could suggest having an Ibasho for everyone.
Yes.
And so you hope to see the development of Ibasho making practices on a global scale, as well as the advancement of Ibasho studies in the academic field. Yeah. So now that you're retired, is this something you want to explore?
Yeah. SDGs listed leaving no behind people as women, children, the elderly, or people with disabilities, immigrants, and indigenous peoples. These are the types of people who tend to be excluded.
Yes.
But as I mentioned, Ibasho is very important for them, and as a refuge and also empowerment. So to accomplish these 17 goals, I think we need Ibasho for them. We should create Ibasho for these excluded people.
I agree. Sounds like a worthwhile, actually sounds like a kokorozashi, like a very big goal to achieve. Yes.
Yeah.
That might take decades, it'll take years or decades to achieve, but very worthwhile. It's changing society.
Yeah.
So I have a few questions, personal questions, Sensei.
Yes.
You've retired, so you obviously don't go to Sophia University anymore. Yes. Was that an Ibasho for you? And so is that an Ibasho you've now lost?
Yeah. My Ibasho was university, Sophia University, and also the NGO, Development Education Associations in Japan. These two Ibasho was located in Tokyo, but I'm living in 1.5 hours from Tokyo. Oh. And I have no Ibasho in my town before. I'm seeking for my Ibasho in my town. And the only person I know is just haircut people.
I see your barber.
One person. I living here 25 years, but I have no friends here. So I'm developing now to friends in my community. I'm seeking for Ibasho in my community.
Well, yeah, maybe that's your new role, is to either create a new Ibasho. That's really interesting, because that touches on the idea, or I guess the belief in the West is that Japanese really commit themselves to work, especially men. And so they give their life to their company, or in your case, you worked at a university. So do you think having a balance of Ibasho is important? And do you wish maybe if you had the time, you spent more time creating an Ibasho where you live?
So I want to advise myself 20 years ago. I should have seeking for Ibasho in my community. Yeah, so not only the working place, but it's necessary. The living place, we need some third place, Ibasho.
I agree. I've recently joined Toastmasters, a place to practice public speaking. And I go there, I think 3 times a month. And it feels like an Ibasho. So we're there to support each other, encourage each other, feel empowered and grow and practice public speaking. So I think community is really important in this context of Ibasho.
I think that isolation for the aged people is a worldwide problem in developed countries. Yeah. As for the Britain, they have some ministry to tackle with the isolation problem, I hear. Yeah, it's very hard for the older people to get the new friends.
Yes. Well, that touches on another unfortunate problem, kodokushi, lonely deaths. Yeah. So we have lots of challenges or problems, but Ibasho sounds like a solution to many of these problems. So now you're retired. You have a lot of free time. So let's briefly touch on Ikigai. What is your Ikigai sensei?
Yes, I like writing anyway. Not only academic field, but everything. I'm curious everything. So I'm searching for a new idea of making books, but not only books, but we can express ourselves in internet or website. So I'm working in my community and traveling abroad, and I want to have some ideas of a new book. It's my Ikigai.
Nice. All right. So writing, would that include blogging? Do you like to blog, or do you just want to focus on writing a book?
Yeah, it's a little difficult to find out a publishing company.
Yes.
After retirement, but there's another way to express themselves. Yeah, like a website or your project also. The other measure for express your research.
Yeah, well, you could always self-publish. So I self-published my book. So that's something you can do. And I'd love you also, if you're interested, you could present to my community. So maybe we could talk about that after the podcast. But if you'd like to present your research on a webinar, I'd love to invite you to do that.
Thank you very much for your giving me this opportunity to express the idea of Ibasho. I'm very happy.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope we can have more conversations together, Tanaka Sensei.
Thank you very much, Nick-san. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ikigai Podcast. To learn more about Ikigai or to become a certified Ikigai Tribe coach, visit ikigaitribe.com.